Thanks for tuning in live here on Proline TV and the Our Lads Football Network. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, as we do some mock drafting 2.0 for Our Lads. We did our first mock, I think it was back in January. So we're talking a couple of months ago. Actually, it's early February after the Super Bowl. So it's been some time. Of course, John Cooper and Dave Syvertson from Our Lads, our top two scouts there. They were a part of that. They will be a part of our final mock that is going to take place the week of the draft. This one is kind of in between because Dave and John are, of course, real busy for the Our Lads draft guide. You can purchase the draft guide right now. We got a link in the description of this video. And also, of course, and as far as time, keep in mind that the draft guide should be mailed out somewhere around the first week of April. And if you would like to get the PDF form, of course, you can get that right away. And it also should be available sometime in early April. So links in the description of this video for that, as well as how to check out what's going on over at Draft Sharks, as we welcome in Shane Hallam. He is a fantasy football NFL draft analyst for Draft Sharks, one of the top fantasy sites out there. Of course, we've worked with them over the last few years. Jared Small has been on this network. Of course, you might know him. And so, Shane, thanks for doing this.
No, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, it's been fun over Draft Sharks. Obviously, we look with the fantasy focus, but I started as an NFL draft analyst. I have a 7-round mock draft up on Draft Sharks, so I'm ready to lay it down with you here.
Yeah, the first time we've done this together, so it should be a lot of fun. We're going to go through all 32 picks. We're going to try to get it done as quick as possible, so we're not doing 3 hours. So hopefully this will last somewhere between 60 and 75 minutes, that sort of range, couple minutes between each pick. And of course, it's going to get a lot fun as we get further and further down the board. Let's pop up. I'll tell you what, I've never used the PFF model before here, this draft simulator, but I'm going to give it a try. It seems pretty easy. This way, everybody can follow along with us, just in case they kind of pop in, a little bit into the show. Of course, you're either going to be able to watch this show live or on demand. And Shane is going to get the odds picks, so that means he's going to pick first. I will get the evens, which just coincidentally gets me up with my own team, the New York Jets. So I wonder how I was able to accomplish that. But anyway, Shane, we'll get you going here. And this is probably one of the easier decisions that you're going to make in the entire draft.
Yeah, maybe the only easy pick of this draft for the Raiders at 1. I'll take Fernando Mendoza, quarterback of Indiana. I just released a profile on him on Draft Sharks, and in a weak quarterback class, I think Mendoza stands head and shoulders above the rest. Heisman Trophy, national championship. I don't think he's on the Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence level of prospect, but I think you're getting a player who can work within structure. If you have enough around him, Mendoza, can place the ball well. He has a little bit of rushing ability, and with Brock Bowers, Aston Genty, and I think Clint Kubiak's system especially, it's going to work for Mendoza. Probably the only big adjustment for him is he only took, I think, 6 snaps in his college career under center, and Clint Kubiak likes you to be under center. So that'll be probably the one adjustment for him. If he can do that, I feel confident he can be at, top 15-ish NFL quarterback.
Yeah, let me see if I could. I'm going to try to also pop up the depth charts as we go along here. And the one thing that all Raider fans are probably really excited about, and of course I'm sure they're really excited about getting Max Crosby back, is the fact that you look at them and now they've got themselves a really good young quarterback prospect. They have a really good prospect already in Ashton Genty in the backfield, and Brock Bowers at tight end. So they're heading in the right direction. There's a long way to go, but at least there's some identity there for the fans to get excited about.
Yeah, exactly. And then they've rebuilt this interior offensive line. I think the Tyler Linderbaum signing, obviously making him the highest paid center ever, was for Fernando Mendoza to make this transition under center easier. You have an experienced center who can make the line calls. Mendoza doesn't have to think too much to start. So I think it's all kind of setting up for Mendoza, who was phenomenal in the red zone throwing the ball. And I think that's going to happen again with Bowers and Genty there.
Okay, so next up, the New York Jets, and I'm not going to screw around with this simulator; it's too much work. Let me go ahead and pop up their depth chart right here. And I think this was also going to be pretty easy as far as the way things look for the New York Jets. I think the obvious needs that they're coming in here are going to be edge rush and receiver. And with the 2 picks, the way they're aligned, it looks like that this is going to be I think it would probably be a little bit more difficult to guess if they were still running a 4-3. But now that they're running a 3-4, it makes too much sense that Arvell Reese, how great he's looked so far, in his workouts and exactly what the Jets need. Seems like the destiny is exactly where Arvell Reese is headed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's a choice for the Jets. I think Arvell Reese gives you the ultimate upside, but he's a player who played more off-ball linebacker for the Buckeyes this past season. And when they let him loose rushing the quarterback, especially early in the season, he was an absolute monster. So the upside to have a Micah Parsons type of player is there. If the Jets want to play it a little safer, you could take a David Bailey, who was probably the best pure pass rusher in college football last year. I think that's going to be the decision for them is do you swing for the home run upside of Arvell Reese, or do you get a player that can rush the passer, fits that 3-4 in David Bailey? I think it's probably who they'll be between for number 2.
Yeah, and if you're either way, though, it's one of those things where, you just sit back if you're a fan of your team and you just hope everything goes well. And these players are not that far apart talent-wise. So let's now go to the Arizona Cardinals. They are up next. And what do you think about their needs? Do you have a couple of specific areas you think the Cardinals are going to be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can go all over the board. Obviously, they need a quarterback. I don't think there's one worth taking here at 3. I think the right tackle position is probably the worst position on the roster right now. They don't have a starter in that spot, and they could certainly use an edge rusher or a defensive lineman, some help on the defense. But I think that right tackle spot is just such a big glaring hole that it's probably what you want to address. A couple possibilities for that here. But to me, I think there's a pretty safe offensive tackle. So I'm going to take, let me see, I'm going to take Francis Moinoa, the offensive tackle out of Miami, who played right tackle in college. I think easy transition just to plug him in there. Very athletic, long arms. He has the wingspan. He's kind of the ideal pass protector who has that nasty streak to be good at sealing that edge. I think it's a safe pick for the Cardinals, but for a team that's probably going to go through a multi-year rebuild, building the offensive line first is smart.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing about the offensive line and where they're going to be graded and so forth, because of the fact that it's one of those drafts where there isn't like a bona fide number 1 tackle. And so, I don't know, what you've been hearing lately, but it just seems like it can go any direction whatsoever. And the other thing too is that, like you said, if Arizona wanted to, and they wanted to turn their attention to the defensive side, then maybe they could just go ahead and take the edge rusher that the Jets weren't going to take. Of course, everybody doesn't know what's going to happen with Ruben Bain either. He could be one of these players that goes in the top 5 or slips out of the top 15 based on his arm length. But overall, it's going to be one of those things where it looks like for Arizona, it's down to edge rusher or tackle.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's just best player available probably is an edge rusher. I do think Moinoa is probably pretty safely the first offensive tackle, and then I think every board's going to differ on who that number 2 is.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Next up is Tennessee. And Tennessee's another team that needs an edge rusher. Even though I think, of course, now if you take a look, let me pop up their depth chart right now. Of course, the acquisition of Jermaine Johnson really helps out. They also have a nice edge rusher from last year's draft who I really like a lot, the kid out of UCLA, Aladejo. But they could, use another guy, no question about it. And they did switch to a 4-3. So, that there's going to be some additional personnel moves there. There's a few other needs too, but I actually think this is going to come down to whether or not they want to pull the trigger on Love with the 4th pick. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and do that is because I agree, and I've agreed. I've been watching this kid, and I'm sure you have too, for the past couple of years. And none of this is a surprise to me as far as everybody just falling in love with him and seeing the talent that this kid has. And I think when it all comes down to it, I think that's what it's about. It's about, look, if you have a couple of different needs and one guy is clearly more talented than the other, that's where you should go. And that's why I think Tennessee is going to pull the trigger on Love number 4.
I think what makes this draft interesting is that a lot of the best, safest players are not premier positions, right? Running back, safety, off-ball linebacker.
Yes.
That's where
Caleb Downs. Yes. I mean,
Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles. So do you take a Jeremiah Love at 4, even though you might not get as much positional value out of it, but you feel pretty confident that you're getting a top, one of the best running backs in the NFL day one? I'm with you. I feel like if Tennessee doesn't take Love, then he probably gets taken 5 to the Giants. I was ready to take him there because I think both of those teams probably want a strong run game to support the young second-year quarterback in Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. So I don't think Love gets out of the top 5.
All right. Next up, like you said, the New York Giants. So let's go ahead and see what they're about. Still a lot of needs for this team. That so far so good as far as the offseason is concerned. Of course, they've got themselves a new shiny coach. You got to look at that receiver position, of course, because they were really in trouble when Neighbors went down. And Mooney was a nice pickup. But that's still just an average talent, just like Slayton, a couple of average talent guys. So at some point you would think they would add another receiver. And then there's a few other needs as well, maybe an offensive guard, a corner, some linebacker help. You mentioned running back. It's going to be interesting if they look at this room, because you said that you were going to go after Love. The interesting thing is, for the Giants, would that have been like, look, we don't really need a running back, but if Love's there, we're not saying no to him. We put Love and Scatterbo out there, and that's just going to be, we can't pass on that. Or are they going to look for a running back a little bit later on in the draft? So how do you think this goes?
Yeah, I think it's always tough when you bring in a new coach, when you bring in a John Harbaugh who has personnel power now. He's not tied to Cam Scatterbo. He's not tied to anyone on this roster, right? So if I want my Derrick Henry, like I want that elite running back, I think they could do that. I think if Love is gone, then Harbaugh's been comfortable in Baltimore with just kind of one main receiver and a lot of secondary options.
I agree.
So I think they turn to the defense, and I think he'll make a fairly safe pick. So I'm going to take Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, who to me grades really well as a safety. I mean, he can do everything. He can man up. He can play zone. He can play toward the line and tackle. He doesn't have that big size and speed, and I think that's the one drawback. It's not a Kyle Hamilton type situation. But Downs, at 18 years old at Alabama, I mean, was a force to be reckoned with, and I think he really made that Ohio State defense run. So I think having Downs, who can play nickel corner, he can play free safety for them, just adds that element that I think Harbaugh likes his defenses to have. That rangy safety that can make plays.
Yeah, so like you said, going back to the whole idea of how interesting this draft's going to be, mentioning Love in the running back position and Downs, because I remember when we did our mock draft, and I wasn't part of it, Dave and John did it, and Downs was like top 5 pick as well. And I remember being very surprised by that. I was like, whoa, wait a second, safety, top 5, what's going on here? Especially after Starks went late in the draft last year. And I know Downs may be a little bit better of a prospect and a little bit more unique as a prospect, like you said, as a nickel corner and so forth, as well as a variety of other roles. Still, it's like, wait a second, are we really going to have that quick of a change in philosophy where, yes, we're going to go after a player, a defensive back this high that's not a shutdown corner, if we feel that player is a unique type of player? But Downs is, Love is, and I think, again, like you said, that's what's going to make this draft really interesting.
Right. I mean, if Downs fell to the middle of the first, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
If he goes top 5, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's going to be the hard thing to really siphon out for those late mock drafts, is like, where do you put these players? And it screams to me, Harbaugh seems like a coach that is willing to take the best football players, and I'll figure out the rest later.
That's definitely where he comes from. No question about it. That was the Raven philosophy. And of course, there's a new GM in town, but Harbaugh's the one really making these final calls. So you got to believe that he is going to use that influence that he learned all those years in Baltimore, because it all paid out for sure. Okay, Cleveland is up next, and let's see. The Browns, they're not taking a quarterback here. Tell you the truth, I'm not even sure they're going to take a quarterback in the first round, but they got that pick later in the first round. They did a lot with the offensive line, but I think they did such a good job of picking up players that could play multiple roles that they didn't pigeonhole themselves, where now they could decide, okay, if we want to pick, if a player is on the board here, whether it's this pick later on, any time in this draft on the offensive line, we can definitely take that player and plug him in to a specific spot. Wide receiver, even though Bond really did a good job last year as a college free agent, the fact is Cedric Tillman's been a disappointment. He's been injured. And are you really going to trust a college free agent from last year, even though that was a player that had a third-round grade, let's just be honest, before everything happened with him before the draft. Also, I think you take a look at their defensive side. See, this is the interesting thing with Cleveland is let's say Downs is available. There's some people who are thinking, well, couldn't Cleveland use Downs? Because I think they still have an issue at nickel corner. And there's a few other spots, especially maybe the interior depth of the defensive line, but especially at the secondary, there might be a situation where, especially if Downs is available, fans are going to be, on one hand, they're going to be pretty stoked because they're going to get a local kid. On the other hand, they're going to go, wait a second, isn't our defense strong enough? I mean, come on, it's time that we go out and get some offensive players. So that could be interesting to see if he's available, what they do. But that's the way I have to go here. I have to say, look, they got to go offense. So it's got to be either left tackle or wide receiver. The first wide receiver is still available if I want to go that route. Who knows who it'll be? In my mind, I think it would be Tate. So I think it's going to come down to Tate or one of the remaining left offensive linemen. So I'm going to go ahead and take Tate. Carnell Tate.
Yeah, I think it's fair. They still get their local kid, I guess. They still get a Buckeye
I guess so, right?
Going there, right?
Give me some other options that you would like.
No. I think you boiled it down well. I mean, I think the other option is left tackle to take Spencer Fano from Utah. He has the short arms, or Monroe Freeling from Georgia is moving up, but he's kind of a work in progress. So I think Tate. Yeah, the thing with this receiver class is I feel like it's gotten pushed up a little bit because it's a weak draft at the top. Like, I think Carnell Tate profiles much better as a number 2 than a number 1. Obviously at Ohio State, we saw that because he had Jeremiah Smith next to him. To me, like, I think, 6th pick, it's probably not worth it. But I mean, Cleveland's such a big need there if they want to develop Shedeur Sanders more, or, try their hand with Deshaun Watson. I think you need the best receiver of this draft. And I think Tate's going to be a good pro. He's probably not, an all pro, but I think you have a safe contributing receiver here.
Yeah, man. I actually thought that, look, I think the only thing holding back Tyson is the injury. I think if you throw the injury out, I think he was definitely the number 1 receiver in this class. But the injury is just going to be a factor that you have to account for. And then throw in the fact that Mekhi Lemon is such an awesome prospect as well, but he doesn't have maybe that type of size that Tate has. And so that's going to be the interesting thing in whichever team decides to go first at wide receiver, or second or third. Which order is it going to be? And will they be the 3 receivers? Is there going to be like an outlier, someone that's going to come in and maybe surprise out of that top 3, especially if people start to feel a little bit concerned with Tyson? I think if someone drops, it's probably going to be Tyson because of the injury factor. I know a lot of people have been saying some nice things lately about Cooper, about his possibility of maybe cracking that top 3. I think the top 3 will go the top 3, but I think anything's possible with the injury situation.
Yeah, I think different teams are going to profile different ways. We saw a lot of teams not use a slot receiver as much last year, use the tight end there. Those teams probably don't want Mekhi Lemon. But if you're Mike McCarthy offense that had CeeDee Lamb, like Mekhi Lemon makes sense. Or, if you're a team that the medical checks out on Tyson and you feel like you can motivate him to play 100% every time, then you'd be willing to take him top 20. So yeah, I think the receiver group is going to be maybe the most fun to me as a fantasy guy, just to see where they end up.
And who knows, maybe if Cleveland does have the Ryan Tate, maybe they look at as this could be the first spot where, hey, if somebody wants to move up and we can move down. We've sure seen Cleveland make a lot of deals over recent years during the draft. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. Okay, next up is Washington. And Washington has a couple new coordinators, and they're getting Janie Daniels healthy. And I think some people just need to realize that even though it's not on the board, I think most of us know that Brandon Ayuk is going to end up in Washington. So I think you have to take that into account. Because if you don't take that into account, you could look at them and go, well, they got to get another receiver, don't they? But if you feel Ayuk is coming to Washington, then I'm not so sure that's a necessary top, round 1 or round 2 need. But what do you think about Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Cornell Tate was still there, it's worth a consideration, but they have a lot of other needs, especially defensively. And I think the board is going to line up so well for a corner. They certainly, with releasing Marshawn Lattimore, need a number 1 type of corner that I think would really make that secondary, which I don't know, to me feels like it's been bad for decades. It feels like Washington's always needed to address the secondary. They certainly can use more pass rush. I think Ruben Bain, if they feel like the arm length is fine, then he's a possibility here. Yeah. But I'm going to lean corner. I do think there is a potential elite corner in this draft, and I'm going to take Mansour Delane, the corner out of LSU, who was absolutely shut down this year. I mean, I think if you just put on the 2025 film and look at him, you think this guy should be a top 5 pick. The athleticism is there, we saw. But he's had his own issues, especially in the past. He had kind of a longer, rockier career, further south in Virginia Tech and whatnot. So I'm a big buyer, and I think Washington. When I look at that depth chart, if you plug in a number 1 corner, you move Mike Sanderstill down to number 2, and you have Trey Amos as number 3, number 4. You have Amik Robertson, the nickel. I think the secondary just looks like a strength instead of a weakness.
Yeah, because even though they have Amik Robertson, I don't think Detroit was able to count on him very much. So I don't know if Washington can. So you definitely need another corner in here. No doubt about it. I'm actually kind of surprised Sanderstill isn't their nickel, but I'm sure he could be if like let's say Delane comes in and Delane and Amos wind up being the starters. Maybe they move Sanderstill inside. So that gives them a lot of options. And I agree. I think Washington's first pick has to be on defense, no matter which way it goes. Okay. Next up is New Orleans. And I know for a couple of months in all mock drafts, everybody was putting Jeremiah Love with the Saints. Of course, that went down the drain as soon as Travis Etienne, or that's right, he's changed his last name now to pronounce it.
Achane, yeah.
Achane, yeah. Which really, I look at his last name and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. Hey, it's his name. So yeah, Travis Achane. That's going to get. I'm glad at least as a player in the league that we've already used his pronunciation already to make it easier for us. But anyway, Travis Etienne, Achane is in there for the Saints. Offensively, I think that leaves wide receiver still. They got a couple of young guys they like in Tipton and Vele, but still, those guys are more 3-4 guys you would believe in Olave. I'm not even sure Chris Olave is a number 1 myself. And I don't think anybody should think that just because Noah Fant is on the Saints that means that they're not looking for a tight end. Okay. This isn't Noah Fant from 6 years ago. Noah Fant's been around the league long enough. He is what he is. And if the Saints want a number 1 tight end like Sadiq, then I think they should go ahead and do that. Matter of fact, that's going to be an interesting conversation with every team that's looking at these receivers. They might say, do we believe Sadiq is already better than, which receiver? And he might go that route. As far as their biggest needs, though, I think are on defense. They got to get some edge rushers here. There really isn't a whole lot to choose from. And also take a look at Nickelback. We just talked about that. Riley's a nice prospect. So, if they like him there, then I would really look over here at left corner. No way Isaac Yadam is a starting caliber corner on a good football team. They've got to do something at linebacker as well. That brings Sonny Styles into the picture. So I'm looking here, and I'm looking at Bailey. I'm looking at Styles, and I'm looking at corner, which, again, another situation with McCoy is going to be just like Tyson. Can McCoy be somebody that gets drafted in the top 10, or does he slide to like 20 or something because of injury concerns? So that's something I don't think he's going to slide that far. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say, look, their top need is edge rusher. Matter of fact, I think it's maybe their top two needs. So I think it's going to be then between Bailey left on our board and Bain. So I'm going to go ahead with Bailey as my pick here.
I think that's a steal, potentially. Definitely a consideration for me at 7 with Washington. I'm just not sure if he fits their defense quite as well, but I think in New Orleans, I love them getting kind of that outside pass rusher. I mean, Bailey's first step is absolutely tremendous and really difficult to stop. And I think when you watch him, you see an elite pass rusher. If kind of the off field checks out in terms of maturity, that type of deal, I think that could be, if he does fall to 8 through like 12, I think that probably is where the concern lies. But the Saints aren't a team. The Saints are a team willing to take chances. I think David Bailey, this could be a floor for him.
Yeah, again, the whole thing with off the field stuff. I mean, we're already seeing the ramifications in Atlanta with Pierce. You just never know. So that's why it's really, really important, especially when you're trading up. But then again, those guys are gone. I'm sure that's a big reason for it. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the big question with the Chiefs is while they have needs on both sides of the ball, what's going to be the philosophy going into this draft? Are they in a situation where, even though of course, Kenneth Walker is a home run signing, but are they going to be at this point now looking like, okay, we've got our running back, that's going to be great, and that's going to solve just about all of our issues on offense that we've had for the last couple of years? Or are they going to double down? Are they going to say, you know what, Sadiq, yes. Wide receiver, 2 or 3, yes. We're just going to get this offense back to where it was a couple of years ago when we were killing everybody. And and our defense is fine, and we're going to play like that. Or are they going to look, we need some edge rushers. We need a little help in the secondary. And we're just going to go with what really matters more, and that is fill in specific needs that we have on defense over just trying to kill everybody on offense. So what do you think their choices are here with the players left on our board?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could take Kenyon Sadiq here. It feels a little high at this point. I know that was kind of an early sexy pick when Travis Kelce looked like he might retire. But this Chiefs team is trying to win the Super Bowl, and you're winning the Super Bowl with Travis Kelce, a tight end this year, right? So it feels like maybe that's more of a day 2, day 3 pick if you want to keep taking shots on the heir apparent. To me, they could take another receiver, but I think, if things, it seems like Rashee Rice is going to play the season, then I think they'll kind of be good there. They lost a lot on defense. I mean, they need an actual edge rusher. I think George Karlaftis is fine. Ashton Gillette is kind of more of a situational player. They lost Leo Chanel. They could use, linebacker. They added some in the secondary, but I think that's still a concern. So to me, it almost works out kind of like the Saints, like whatever the Saints don't pick, that the Chiefs could certainly take. So I'm going to lean defense here, try to build that up. If we have a strong enough defense and Patrick Mahomes, you feel like you can win a Super Bowl. And I think Ruben Bain is the type of player that the Chiefs would take. I don't think they're going to care about arm length. I don't think they're going to care about the little things. They're going to care. This guy is young. He wrecked shop. He can learn from Chris Jones. We'll sit them next to each other in every meeting, and these two are going to just make sure that we don't have to score 30 points anymore. We can score 20 and win the game, and that should be enough for Mahomes and Kenneth Walker to do.
All right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. With a player of Bain's caliber on this team, he's a perfect fit for what they're looking for in their 4-3 defense. Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, sure, would it be a surprise if Andy Reid's team went after a flashy offensive weapon? No. But talent wise, and just taking a look at their depth chart, they got to get better there. Okay, Cincinnati is next, and this is a team that clearly, unless somebody was available on offense, it was just too good to pass up. They would go that direction, but it's all about defense. And the interesting thing about the way I'm hearing people look at the Bengals, and I get it, is everybody's talking about, well, they got to add in the secondary. And I think what they'll point to is Jalen Davis. But I think some people that say that, not everybody, but maybe the people that don't do their homework may not realize that as soon as Jalen Davis got put into that lineup last year in the secondary and everybody was healthy, that secondary actually played really well. And so I don't think it's as big as a need as everybody seems to react. And when they're talking about mocks, I'm not saying that they won't take a corner, because I still think they need to add one more guy in that secondary. But I don't think it's as big as a need as some people believe, and I don't think they would roll the dice on McCoy's injury situation here, because they got so much talent now. They got to go out there and they got to get wins. So I think it's going to be once again, I think it's got to be somewhere up front, and it could be Sonny Styles. I know that they drafted these two kids. But neither one are first round talent players like Styles. So with him on the board, I think he's definitely up there. And then the other players that I would be looking at would probably be along the edge, but we've already taken a few of these top edge guys. And I think Howell would be the next one in line. So I think it comes down to going after either Howell or Styles myself. And I'm going to go ahead. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and take Sonny Styles. I think that even though they let these two young kids play all last year, and I get why they did that. You look at their situation now with Mafe replacing Hendrickson, and Shamar Stewart was a first-round draft pick. So you did that last year. You gave big money to Mafe. You've got Miles Murphy. I mean, do you really need a fourth guy? It would be nice, but I don't know if you need him in the first round. So I think Sonny Styles might be like the best available defensive prospect left on the board. And I think that's what the Bengals need.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's really no one else, like I said, unless they wanted to take Jermon McCoy. I think Sonny Styles just kind of fell in their lap. Maybe if Bain or Bailey fall to them, then okay, we could use another first round pick and try to replace Trey Hendrickson that way. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's nothing else, no one else on the board value wise that lines up. And I think Sonny Styles, just with the athleticism, the pass coverage range that he has, it's just a perfect fit for what they need. He's going to help you stop the run a little bit better, and he's going to help you stop those kind of tight ends in some of the zone coverage. I really love it, and I think this would really help that Bengals defense.
Okay, next up, we have the Miami Dolphins, and boy, they had themselves an offseason. So
talk about needs.
What was funny too is like when I was before I even got myself into the mocks, I was seeing a lot of mocks that weren't going in the secondary, and I was saying it should be secondary. I mean, their secondary is so bad talent-wise. But then I started doing my own mocks, and I realized, well, okay, I guess I can see why some people are going with other directions, because maybe other prospects are graded higher than the secondary, but they do have 2 picks in the first round. They obviously need to do something about that secondary. There's no question about that. But they also have maybe a possible need at offensive tackle. And they got to do something about getting some more wide receivers in there as well. But what do you think? Because again, first of 2 picks. So what direction do you think they go with their first pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty open to me for them to go with the best player available. Obviously, the wide receiver situation is dire. But I don't really believe that, John Eric Sullivan, the new GM coming from the Packers, we have Jeff Hafley coming from the Packers. What do the Packers not do? That's draft, receivers, tight ends in the first round. And so I don't think that's going to be the philosophy of this new staff. And I think it's why they let, Waddle and Hill go. That's the last thing that we can build, right, in a rebuild.
True.
I think what you need, like you said, offensive line or fixing that secondary enough that you can stay in games, against Drake May and against Josh Allen. So in terms of value to me, I think the wide receivers or Kenyon Sadiq would line up value wise. But I think Jermon McCoy also lines up here, and I'm going to take Jermon McCoy at 11. Obviously, the injury concern is there, but we saw him run a 4.38 today at the Tennessee Pro Day. Get the medical recheck. It seems like he's back in football shape, ready to go. So some of those concerns about the combine seems to me like him just buying a little bit extra time. Now that he was able to do a full workout, I think teams are going to be much more comfortable, and I'll be a little surprised if he falls out of the top 12. A little stiff for me. I don't quite grade him as high as I think the NFL will, but I do think McCoy has the physicality and the ball skills to develop into a number one corner.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the teams that are probably going to go after McCoy are going to be the teams that aren't in a rush. The teams that can, hey, we'll take it slowly. We're not going to. Other teams that are trying to win Super Bowls or go deep into the playoffs, I don't think they could take a chance on McCoy, especially, he's going to go early. And so I just think it makes more sense for a team like the Dolphins that have all the time in the world to make sure that this kid takes his time, gets on the field when he needs to, and it's for the long run and not for 2026. Okay. The Dallas Cowboys are next. And even though this is another situation, sort of like I was saying with Cincinnati, it's all about defense unless there's a prospect on offense. It just makes too much sense. And for me, it's all about do they, and again, they have 2 picks. So it's all about, do they feel that one of these offensive linemen, especially, wouldn't it be funny if they put Proctor alongside Booker? I don't know they need to do that now, though. I think they could roll the dice and maybe take their chances a little bit later on. But the main thing with the defense, it all depends, too, on exactly who's available. I mean, hey, if they leave someone like Proctor we still have Fano on the board, who we both believe could have gone to, I don't know, he could have gone to Cleveland or the Giants. So he's still available. But again, defensively, the Cowboys have got to do something about this defense. I mean, McCoy is somebody that could have been really interesting if he was still on the board. Now the question is, when you have both McCoy and Delane off the board, what happens at that point? Taking a look at the secondary list of players that are still left, and I don't really think there's another corner right now that is going to go very high. I mean, Terrell is a guy that could go sometime soon, but I'm not sure he'd be somebody that that would go and be warranted with the 12th pick. So the Cowboys' biggest needs are edge rusher, and besides right tackle, corner, and an inside linebacker. They need that guy that is going to be the extension of the new coordinator. So I think it's going to come down to, on our board, I think it comes down to tackle. Again, I'm going to save tackle for later because Proctor's still there as well as Fano. So I'm going to save that for later, and a couple other guys. I think Rodriguez is somebody that could go a little bit higher than people think because of type of player he is, playmaker and all that. I know he's small, but I just, I think he's one of these kids that is just a winner, and it would not surprise me if he went high. But because there are still a couple of good edge rushers, let's see, what do we have left here on the board? We still have Howell still left on the board. And he's a really talented edge rusher. And so that is actually where I'm going to go. I think the Cowboys need some more pass rushers, and I don't think it's that bad to get Howell at 12.
No, I think pass rusher obviously is something that they're going to consider. I mean, we saw them make a play for Max Crosby. Obviously, not get that deal done. They weren't willing to give the 2 first-round picks. So why not use one on the top guy? And I think Cassius Howe, from what he did in the SEC this year, is worth it. It's just the arm length. I mean, 30 and a quarter at the combine is like bottom 5 percentile of arm length for an edge rusher. It just if you can get past that, then everything else lines up great. And I think a team, maybe Dallas, maybe another team, will get past that. So I'm with you. And I think this kind of 12 to 25 spot for edge rusher. Like you mentioned, Falk, Mesidor makes a lot of sense. Just with how the board's fallen, I think Sonny Styles would have been great here. I think one of the corners would have been great here, but with how the board's fallen, it hasn't really worked too well in the Cowboys' favor.
Yeah, it's a deep class 2 of edge rushers, so I think that'll bode well for anybody that needs them. Okay, so next up, the LA Rams, and they've done such a great job. I think I don't think anybody really has done a whole lot better job as far as a general manager than Snead has, and that combination there with McKay. They are just an incredible 1-2 punch, and that's why they are going to be one of the favorites once again to be a Super Bowl team. As far as what they need, I still think they will look at wide receiver. Adams last year on his contract, getting a little old. Puka, you just can't count on because he's always banged up and hurt. Now he's biting chicks. And then you've got the other factor too, is not in this round, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if at some point in this draft, if the Rams chose a quarterback somewhere around the 3rd, 4th round, take one of those young guys. Cause I don't know if they're going to be completely sold on Stetson Bennett as the replacement for Matthew Stafford when it's time for Matthew Stafford to go. Otherwise, they've done such a good job drafting and this offseason filling in that secondary that they could pretty much pick. They can go anywhere based on the type of player that's still left on the board.
Yeah, I think if they had that other 1st-round pick, that they traded to the Chiefs, then maybe quarterback was a possibility there. But it's a team going into the offseason. It was like, okay, the Rams are going to take secondary, but then they trade for Trent McDuffie, they sign Jalen Watson, right? They kind of build this Chiefs secondary that was so good back in LA, and it does make me think offense. I think receiver, they obviously have been interested in additional receivers. So with Lemon and Tyson still on the board, I think that's a possibility. And then I think offensive tackle was the other one where, Alaric Jackson can certainly be upgraded. I don't think Warren McClendon is an ideal right tackle either. So drafting offensive line to protect Matthew Stafford, who's not running around, I think is important. And with the way our board's fallen, offensive tackle feels like the value here. So I'm going to take Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle out of Utah, here to the Rams. I think they are a team historically that hasn't cared about some of those measurables. Fano had the arm length isn't quite as good as you want. It's close if you go by the pro day. But the Rams, they drafted Aaron Donald. I think they're a team that would draft Cassius Howe if they needed pass rush, right? Like they're a team that doesn't care about that. I think Fano would be a perfect fit and a good value at 13.
Yeah, and the question will be, let's say if let's say there's no bargain there at tackle, like you said, wide receiver, especially at 13 to be able to get their pick out of either Tyson or Lemon, that might be too good to pass up as well. So they're in a good situation. They always are. And again, just to show you how good Snead is, I mean, you just mentioned it. 5th round pick at right tackle, college free agent at left tackle. I mean, that's how you draft. That's how you build the team, because those guys weren't getting paid anything for a few years, and they've turned into starting caliber offensive tackles on a Super Bowl contender. So that just shows you how good Snead and McVay are together. Okay, speaking of drafting well, Baltimore's up next. And yeah, I'm not going to take too long here, because the way that our board is straightened out, I think it's going to be I'm going to go between 2 choices, Sadiq and Ione, the guard from Penn State, who looks like one of the better guard prospects to come around in a while. He's a boatload of talent. Voorhees is still there at left guard. I don't know what to make out of Emory Jones yet. I don't think they do, but he was a 3rd-round pick. And if they like him, then maybe they don't go in that direction. But I think it's important to maybe get a player like that because we still have are they really going to go into the season with Cordy Bullock at center? Come on, I don't think that's going to happen. So maybe they'll get a center in this draft or trade for one or sign somebody. But it's too early, obviously, for a center. So I think it comes down to either the Penn State guard or Sadiq. I'm going to go ahead and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take Sadiq, actually. I'll take Sadiq here because Andrews, they've lost their other 2 tight ends, which I'm really shocked. I thought they would lose with one of them, not both of them. And Andrews is starting to get up there in age. He's no longer the difference-making tight end that a Sadiq can be. So with Lamar Jackson there, he needs more weapons, and I'm going to go ahead and take the tight end.
I love it. I think I wonder if we see that shift in philosophy of getting more weapons for Lamar Jackson finally. And I think Sadiq would be that. Having a guy that can be in the slot and be a mismatch makes a ton of sense. Like it feels kind of against the Ravens way, like you're saying your lineman or tight end. It feels like lineman every time, right? It's what they would take. But I think
they might. Yeah, they might.
They might. But I think this is the time to finally try to give Lamar some actual weapons to work with instead of just his legs and a running back and a wide receiver 1.
Okay, next up, the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Bucks had a very disappointing season last year. Their reign in the South came to an end, so they got to pick things back up once again. What direction do you think they need to look at here?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like offense is pretty well set for them. Maybe if Sadiq was still there, you could consider him, with Cade Otton, pairing with Cade Otton. But they drafted Emeka Egbuka last year, so I think that's in pretty good shape. And I think you'll look at the defense. Edge rusher is still a big need. I don't love any of the edges on the board, especially as a stand-up edge. We have a lot of bigger guys, Keldrick Falk and Akeem Mesidor. I don't think necessarily fit what the Buccaneers need in that kind of 3-4 type stand-up pass rusher. So, linebacker is inside linebacker is probably the other big need for them. They sign Alex Anzalone. Servasi Dennis is fine, but not a typical inside linebacker. So I'm going to pick a player who I don't think is worth the pick, but I think is probably the way that they would go. I'm going to take CJ Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia. I think he's going to go higher than I would want. Not like super, has that athleticism, but it's kind of out of position a lot. Not someone I graded great on film, but seems like the NFL is going to want this kind of sideline to sideline type inside linebacker. Tampa Bay likes having those type of players, and it seems like a position that they try to fill here in the middle of the first round.
I think this is going to be one of those situations that we see all the time in the NFL is CJ Allen will probably be the first inside linebacker taken, but Malcolm Rodriguez will be much better in the NFL because he's a playmaker. He just makes plays, but he's too small. He doesn't have the measurables, and not that Allen's Jacob, a beast, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's like he's going to be a really good player, but Allen will get drafted ahead of him. It's just the way it is. Okay, so that's the Bucks. Back to the Jets, and again, I think this is easy, especially because I think this is going to be the way it'll work out. At some point, they're going to have at least one of these receivers left, and they get both of them here, both Tyson and Lemon. I'm not going to make it difficult. I think if it comes down to Tyson and Lemon, I think you have to choose Lemon because, again, you are dealing with a player coming off an injury, and you just never know. I think if you're a fan, though, like I said before, with the edge rushers and same thing, you can go either way. If whoever they pick, I would be happy with. But I just think it's a safer pick to go with Lemon, and that'll be my choice.
You definitely. I feel like the Jets have to address wide receiver here early if they want to have any chance of a future, franchise quarterback, depending on if they take one in this class or next year, working out. Now, Lemon's my top receiver in this class. I think, I know he's probably slot only. It's not going to fit every team, but after the catch, man, I think Mekhi Lemon's just the top. So I think it'd be a slam dunk pick to put him next to Garrett Wilson. That'd be tough to stop.
Yeah. I really like Tyson too, but yeah, that injury definitely just concerns me. And yeah, it's not when you have another dynamic player like Lemon on the board. It's like, no, just take the safe pick. You're not going to lose there. The kid's really just a talented player, like you said. Okay, next up is Detroit, and the Detroit Lions. Boy, they're going through a very pivotal offseason here. After losing their superstar coordinators, things did not work out for them last year. They've also had a lot of injuries on defense the last couple of years that have really hurt them, especially in the secondary and at edge rusher. And that's really a couple of other big needs once again. So what direction do you think Detroit's going to be looking at here?
Yeah, it really comes down to two kind of positions for me. Be right tackle. I mean, Taylor Decker is out, and I think that's a huge need for them. Larry Borum isn't a starter at right tackle, and they've been searching for an edge across from Aiden Hutchinson for a while. And they signed DJ Woonem. I think he's okay. Peyton Turner as well, but that's a position they could look for. So I think both pretty good values here. I'm going to lean tackle. I just think it's a bigger need. I think they're going to want to keep that offensive machine going. Which tackle to pick is a little.
Well, who's the toughest son of a bitch that's left? Because that's what Campbell's going to want.
You're right. Yeah, that's the type of player. I think they're going to want. Like, I think Monroe Freeling from Georgia. I'm between the SEC guys. Monroe Freeling from Georgia or Caden Proctor from Alabama. I think Freeling probably has more upside to be kind of a franchise offensive tackle, but is less developed even than Proctor, who was up and down last year. But both have the physical tools. And I think Proctor's probably a little bit safer. I'm going to lean Caden Proctor just for the Lions. I feel like he fits a little better of that toughness, that run blocking off the edge, and what you're getting at right tackle. I think if it was a team that's that's not in win now mode, then maybe they go Freeling, and I could see Freeling going higher than this, but I'm gonna go Proctor here.
Okay, Minnesota is next, and let's get them on the board here. The Vikings. Of course, everything in Minnesota is about the quarterback is the big story there with McCarthy and Murray, and what's going to go on there. And is it possible at all that they make a trade with McCarthy? I don't really see that happening. But I will say, the whole thing that went down with their GM and Darnold and McCarthy, it didn't make a lot of sense. It was almost like there was a disconnect in communication, because I really don't understand why McCarthy is the quarterback for O'Connell. It's like he doesn't seem like the right fit. Like O'Connell wants to run his system, and McCarthy, that's not the system McCarthy is comfortable running. And so it's interesting because he finally decided late in the season last year to start to do a little bit what works best for McCarthy, but not what O'Connell wants to run. And the team wound up winning like 5 of the last 6 games. But that's not what he wants to do. And he's being pig-headed about it. And so, again, I don't know why McCarthy's here. So I really would not be surprised if J.J. McCarthy got traded at some point. But as far as what this team needs, I think it's going to be on defense. I think that they could look at corner. I think they could look at safety. I think those are 2 of their top needs. They got a few other needs that they're going to have to figure out along the way, like nose tackle and corner. And I think there's another position along the offensive line that they also have to take in and that's center. I don't think they could really trust Blake Brandel long term. But I'm going to go ahead, and we talked about that this might be a different draft with players and positions that don't normally go very high. And I'm going to go with the second safety on the board, Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, for Minnesota, to be the next Harrison Smith. So what do you think about that choice?
That's what I would have done too. Why not replace Harrison Smith with, I think is Harrison Smith light. I think Thieneman can play all over the field, the playmaker, especially 2 years ago at Purdue, played well at Oregon. It makes sense. I think the Vikings probably have to address that defensive side if they're comfortable with Kyler Murray. I'm not going to leave wide receiver off the table either. I know Jordan Addison, they picked up the option, but it's a team that, I mean, has literally nothing at the third receiver spot right now.
Yeah, look, they drafted Felton, so I guess we'll find out if they feel like they made the right choice.
He's a special teams guy. Like I don't think they drafted him to be that. So we'll see.
Probably another reason why their GM's gone. Yeah. Okay. Next up at number 19 is Carolina, and the Panthers having a very successful season last year. It looks like things are going to pointing up really well for them. Their defense has made an incredible transformation from 2024 to 2025. And even now this offseason with Lloyd and Phillips on board, they still have a few spots that they need to take care of on defense. And there's also potential openings on offense too. Running back, what are they going to do there? They need to bring another guy in because there's some questions there after Hubbard. There's some questions along the offensive line. What do you think? What direction does Carolina go?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, I don't see like a ton of glaring holes for them. I think along with what you said, maybe an edge rusher, Nick Scorton's more, rotational, probably Jalen Phillips at this point in his career is as well. But again, I don't know if I see that stand-up edge here. I think with the depth of the class, you can wait a little bit. So I think the Xavier Legette experiment has failed. He's not a starting NFL receiver outside of Teteroa McMillan. There's not a ton. I like Jalen Coker in the slot.
Yeah.
But I think with the value here, I think Jordan Tyson is a player that, Dave Callis likes having a lot of those options at receiver if they want to support Bryce Young. And this is going to be the way to do it. I'm going to have him take Jordan Tyson, maybe a little surprise, but I could see him filling in that spot and having a really dangerous duo with Tyson and McMillan.
Yeah, that's, again, just like we said with Minnesota, I guess we'll find out how confident they are in Legette, because we know if they draft Tyson, they're not very confident that Legette is going to be able to be that guy, because Coker, McMillan, that's a really good 1-2 punch, and then you throw Tyson in there. Wow, that might be the best young receiving core in the entire league. So, and not a surprise from a head coach who coached wide receivers and knows how to coach them up. So, other possibilities, I mean, I would keep an eye on Avion Terrell at nickel. I think they definitely have to do something there at that spot. Again, it also depends on how confident they are as Smith Wade, who looked good last year, is really the long-term answer. And Nick Scott definitely needs some competition at free safety. I know they drafted Ransom, but he's sort of like the same guy that Morig is. So I think free safeties, hey, if Thieneman is still available and they can get another safety in there, maybe that's a direction they could go. But he's off our board, and hey, it's players are going to drop. And when they're available like this, it makes a lot of sense for a coach that loves wide receivers to draft one of the top receivers who could end up as the top receiver in this whole class at number 12 and number 19. Okay, I get the Cowboys again. And with that first pick, we went ahead with Howell, pass rush. And the remaining, again, we talked about inside linebacker. They still have to do something there. They have to do something at right tackle. So I think that's what we're down to. I also think they can add another corner for sure. And there are a couple of corners still available. So at this point, if Proctor was still here, I probably would go that direction. But Freeling is, and I think that's something, I think he's definitely got to be on their short list. I'll roll the dice though here. And again, it may be a little high because of his size, but I think Rodriguez would be a great pick here. I really do. I think the Cowboys need an identity on defense, and they need a leader on defense. And I think Rodriguez would be the perfect guy for that role. So I'm going to go ahead and take Rodriguez here.
Yeah, I mean, you got to love Jacob Rodriguez and what he did, both in terms of production last year and at the combine. It's just the size. Is that worth taking in the top 20 and plugging in there. I think it's a pretty safe pick for them. And you bring in Rodriguez and Howe, I think are kind of outliers in terms of in some way, is that enough to make it? I probably would have went Freeling. I think that's, that type of upside, but I don't know. Dallas is never,
they don't have a team to do
really
things that are normal. Yeah. They seem to do things that you scratch your head about. So maybe that's what this would be. Not that they fail every time they do that. And that's the reason why they're still one good offseason, one good draft away defensively from actually being a very interesting playoff team. Okay. Next is Pittsburgh. And we still have no idea what the whole, what the deal is with Aaron Rodgers. The other thing to consider with Pittsburgh at quarterback is, what they think about Howard. Do they believe, now that they've seen him, that he's their young prospect? He's the guy that they can maybe work with, or no? Then quarterback has to be in play. Other positions are wide receiver. There's a lot of talk that they definitely will look to add one player there to go along with Metcalf and Pittman. And I could see that being the case. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think all those are possibilities. I mean, it seems like they haven't really tried for another quarterback, so it seems like Aaron Rodgers will probably be back. And I think they like Will Howard enough, but maybe could take a quarterback day two. I don't think Ty Simpson is necessarily the pick here, but I'm sure they'll get a close look at that. Secondary corner, they signed Jamel Dean, but still could use, a more reliable nickel, a little more depth at that position. I think inside linebacker, if those were to fall, they could look there. But really, I think offensive line for Mike McCarthy is a big one. He's had success when he was with the Cowboys drafting offensive line. And Broderick Jones, it's been kind of a failed experiment at left tackle. But really the biggest hole for them is left guard. Right now they do not have a starting left guard on the roster. And I think you have one really interior offensive lineman we're taking here. So makes it easy for me. I'm going to take Penn State's Vega Ione and plug and play left guard, starts day one, stays in Pennsylvania. This feels like a Pittsburgh Steelers type of move.
Yeah, I think they'd be ecstatic to have that opportunity. Matter of fact, the Chargers might be real upset, and they may want to trade and jump ahead of him if he lasts 21. So, because again, we could see him go as high as maybe Baltimore or somewhere in that range. That's how talented he is. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And again, wide receiver too. If one of those guys, I know they're talking a lot about Cooper because of his position coach is now his former position coach is now the position coach with the Steelers. So there's a tie there. And what's also interesting is that not in the first round, but in the second round, I would think, do the Steelers take a look at Nussmeier? McCarthy and the whole thing there, coached with his dad. There's a relationship. So he's probably known his son for a long time. So that's also something to keep an eye on in the second round.
Don't discount Cole Payton from North Dakota State. I've heard they're interested. So
wow, okay. I wonder what round that would be. That would be interesting.
Third round.
Okay, maybe. Interesting. Chargers. It's first, second, third, and fourth picks are going to be offensive linemen, we would think. So yeah, they would be very upset at this point. But see. That's the thing with the Chargers is they're so desperate for interior linemen that at this point there really is. I mean, you can't pick. I don't really see a guard outside of Ione going in the first round. I think there'd be a little bit of a stretch if another guard maybe were to make that, unless maybe the Chargers trade down. It gets it because they definitely can use some more draft collateral too. So maybe we'll see the Chargers trade down if the top guard isn't around. I think edge. In the meantime, I think edge is something that they could be looking at. Lomu though is still on the board from Utah, and the thing with Lomu, the only thing is unlike his teammate. I don't think he's got the ability to punch inside. So I'm going to have to pass on that. So I'm probably looking at, let's see, who else here? Probably edge rusher. Who's on the board now at edge rusher? Who do we still have left? We have Height. Who else do we have left on our board? We have Height.
Yeah, we got Falk, Keldrick Falk, Keem Mesidor, you know.
Mesidor. Yeah, Mesidor. You know what? Let's go with Mesidor. Yeah, I don't want to go with Falk. I don't trust Falk as an edge rusher. Let's see. Could I trust? Yeah, let's. They got to go. They got to go pass rusher if they don't go. If they do not, because nobody else has slipped on our board that I can see, that would be a big pickup for them. Do you see anybody? Who would you take here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough spot. I'm glad I wasn't picking for them. That's what I was glad. Yeah, I think it's a tough spot. Yeah, I probably would go edge rusher. I think Mesidor is probably, again, the Chargers are a team that's competing now. Mesidor's older, but he can pass rush. I don't think you trust Khalil Mack there to last the season.
Yeah. So I think the Chargers, who know this, obviously, they're going to have a decision to make. Do they trade up? Do they trade down? So we could definitely see the Chargers do that. But I'll go ahead with Mesidor as the top pick for the Chargers. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles, also a team that needs some edge rusher help. Maybe they could look at an offensive tackle for the future. They probably need to also add a tight end at some point in this draft and a few other spots. So what do you think the Eagles are going to do here in round one?
Yeah, I think we know the Eagles' MO is to go with the trenches, go with that offensive lineman, an edge rusher, defensive tackle. That's really what they like to do in the first round, and those line up with their needs. I think it lines up decently value wise, but it seems like tackle is probably where the value is for them. And I know it's not going to be a player that you're going to plug and play start, but we saw what happened last year when you didn't have any depth at that tackle position. So I'm just going to take the value here. I'm going to take Monroe Freeling, and I think this would be an ideal spot for Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, to go. You don't have to start him right away. You can develop him a little bit, but behind Jordan Mailata and behind Lane Johnson, and let him kind of catch up. And then, hey, if an injury happens again, you have an upside young offensive tackle that can actually fill in and help.
Yeah, that's why it does look like a really good fit. A player that needs some time. The Eagles don't need to throw him in there right away, and because he's the future, he will take over for Lane Johnson at some point. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense on our board. Okay, the Cleveland Browns are next, and with the first pick went wide receiver with Tate, and as I mentioned at that point, it was either offensive line. Wide receiver was definitely in the mix, of course, which is why I went that direction. But now that the offensive line is still available, and again, that was my outlook is if you're going to take a wide receiver early, well, you got to go with your early pick because it's not as deep as the offensive line class. So with at least another good offensive lineman left, especially at the tackle position in Lomu. That's the position I'm going to go here. So I'm taking Lomu. I'm not going to go with quarterback. I know there's a possibility they could do that, but I don't know. I'm taking Lomu, but we're now starting to get into that end of the first round area where you do start wondering whether Simpson becomes a first round pick. Does another team, we see this all the time, jump into the late end of the first round to go and get him?
I think you start seeing that spot, and I think if you're the Browns and you're not sold on Ty Simpson, it feels to me like they gathered this extra pick with the chance to move up for a quarterback if they needed to, and it looks like 2027 is that year.
That's what I think.
Can you get a 2027 first? I think if I was the Browns to do that, I think Loma's a good pick here. I think edge rusher would be the other possibility for them, but we're kind of getting to the end of that group pretty quick.
Okay, next up, the Chicago Bears. And the Bears, of course, had a huge year last year. We'll see if they can repeat. They had the unfortunate situation at center. They were forced to trade for Garrett Bradbury. That is going to be a step down. So it'll be interesting to see maybe if they draft a center at some point in this draft to eventually replace Bradbury, because Bradbury really isn't that great of a center. He never became the player that the Vikings wanted him to be, but he's okay. He's a stopgap. That's all he is. As far as the rest of the team, on defense, I mean, they got to do something about some of these spots on defense. They lost Brisker, they lost Bayard at safety, they lost. They need some edge rush help. I think most of their concerns are on defense, except if they want to add maybe a slot receiver at some point.
Yeah, it feels like defense, they could take Omar Cooper here. He's definitely on the board. But I think Ben Johnson can probably work some magic on day 2 for that slot receiver in a deeper receiver class. So to me, it comes down to edge, which would be Keldrick Falk, who is not, I think, ready to be, an edge rusher is going to take some time. And I think the Bears want immediate production, or safety. Like you said, they signed Kobe Bryant, they signed Cam Lewis. Neither one are standout safeties, and I think there's one more on the board. So I'm going to take him here. I'm going to take Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety out of Toledo, who I think is a dynamic potential, playmaker, can play maybe either safety spot, and just his unique playmaking ability, I think, would add a new element to this Bears defense.
Yeah, he really has risen up the charts. I know it's you see these players that when you start the offseason, and then the first time they pop up on the scene, you're like, really, where did that guy? Especially when they come from, the MAC. But the kid can play, and that's what's so really fun about the draft. This is when you really find out about these types of players that you don't really know much about. I mean, probably nobody's ever seen the kid play. Because Toledo doesn't get much airtime, except maybe on ESPN Plus. Okay, the Buffalo Bills are up. Of course, they made the splash trade for DJ Moore. And the question, though, is, are they done there? They shouldn't be. I know they're saying all the right things about Keon Coleman, but the fact of the matter is, I thought at the time it was a bad pick, and I'm not obviously changing my mind. They made a bad decision there, and they're just hoping that, we'll flip a switch, and that's all they can do is hope. But I don't think it's going to happen, which is why I think they're going to go back at wide receiver at some point early. They'll also look at the secondary. I think D. Alford is just a stopgap himself. I don't think that's anything serious. If he has got to play, he's got to play, and maybe they'll be okay. But I think they got to add some competition there. And also at safety, Gardner Johnson, he seems to last one year on every team. So that's unless they like Hancock's future, I think they got to do something at safety. So, maybe someone like Bud Clark could be in the picture here. But I am going to stay with the 2 players I'm going to like, because they also need edge rushers. Bradley Chubb, I don't know if you can count on him, and they've already lost a couple of guys, so I think they can use another edge rusher. Maybe TJ Parker would be a good fit here, but I'm going wide receiver again, and taking a look at the wide receiver list. I think Boston at this spot is not a bad idea. Kind of complements DJ Moore and Shakir at the slot. That's the direction I'm going to go. I'm taking Boston.
Yeah, Denzel Boston. I think that's the tough part for Buffalo, is if they want a receiver, it feels like a good spot for a slot. And I think they have that one covered. Omar Cooper, Casey Concepcion might be higher thought of, but I think Denzel Boston would give you that traditional X that they hoped they had with Keon Coleman for sure. I think corners a possibility. Navion Terrell in that nickel spot would really do wonders too for that defense.
Okay, San Francisco is next, and are the Niners? Look, we all know at some point they have to bring in Trent Williams' replacement, but the Niners don't seem to give much attention to offensive linemen early in the draft. They don't really need to. It's a system. The system works, so they bring in guys in the middle rounds, in the late rounds, and it just works. But when Trent Williams leaves your offensive line, I think that is going to be an issue. I think they're going to need like a number 1 guy, a really talented player. The question is, do they do that in this draft, or do they do it in future drafts? So we'll keep an eye on that. That has to be something to keep an eye on, as is maybe some other positions along the way, including wide receiver, maybe edge, maybe even inside at guard. What do you think? I know there's even been talk at tight end, but what do you think?
Yeah, secondary too can always use an upgrade for them. But I'm kind of buying the system. I don't think they're going to take an offensive lineman despite offensive tackle. I think being a good value here ultimately. But I think receiver is definitely a position they have not been afraid to take highly. And you have Mike Evans, who's older and got hurt last year. You have Ricky Pearsall, who can't stay healthy. You have Christian Kirk, who's gotten hurt the last 2 years, and nothing beyond that. So I'm going to take Omar Cooper Jr. here as maybe a slot receiver to compete with Christian Kirk. An injury happens, I think he can step into that spot. And they like to rotate that right and slot receiver. I think Cooper could do a little bit outside if Pearsall goes down as well.
Okay, yeah, Cooper would probably be a good value pick here the way he's going. Next up, as we move to 28, are the Houston Texans, and another situation where you would just immediately think, well, Houston's got to do something, has to add offensively. They don't have to. I mean, they're one of the best defensive teams in the NFL. But there are some. Actually, when I look at Houston, I look at the fact that they're in a good position because even though that they can fill in certain spots like defensive tackle, edge, and I'm only talking depth, like number 2, number 3 guys, defensive tackle, edge, nickel corner, they could pick if there's a guy available. And there are a couple of those guys available, especially at defensive tackle, that I think are good options here. I think they could look at offensive tackle. They could take a look at someone like Miller from Clemson. I think he should be under consideration here. They definitely need to do something on the inside of their offensive line. I don't know how much longer they can go with Jake Andrews at center. So maybe later in the draft. I don't think Lou, the kid from Auburn. I don't think it's. I think it'd be way too high to draft him in my mind. Even though you can never know at 28 anything's possible, but I'm going to go at Miller's not going to be my choice. It'll be my second choice, but I'm going to go ahead with defensive tackle. And Rankins is getting older. Tommy Togai is okay, but I don't think there's enough young difference makers at defensive tackle. And you can get your choice of Banks, Hunter, or Woods. And I think because of that, you're pretty much able to take your pick at the best defensive tackle prospects in this draft. And so I'll go ahead and take Woods as the choice here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of defensive tackles that could go this late. Woods, I like a lot. I think Caden McDonald too, if you want just the elite, run stopping guy to kind of fill 2 gap. So I think it's an important part of Houston's defense to have that defensive tackle and let those edge rushers, do their work. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and Falk is also available if they want to go with a third edge guy, but. With those 2 stalwarts, I think they could wait for another edge guy later on. All right, Kansas City's up next. We've already made a pick for them, of course. Bain, number 9, edge rusher. So what do you think they're going to do with pick number 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at maybe this could be a spot for a playmaking receiver, but I just can't make the pick of Casey Concepcion with Xavier Worthy there and Rashee Rice in the slots. Like, no, I'm going to take another small speed slot receiver. Probably is not the way to go. And so that makes me look back on defense. I think they could take defensive tackle. They could take, the next guy up. After taking Bain and maybe plug up those holes in the middle, that right defensive tackle spot. I don't think that Tonga necessarily is starting every down. And then I think secondary, right? They traded away Trey McDuffie. The nickel spot is open to me as a position that they've upgrade a little bit, but probably could use another one. So I'm going to go that way. I think Avion Terrell finds his way into the first round. Despite his private pro day, he getting hurt on the first run and not doing much. And I think, he could play nickel, maybe has some shot to play outside in a Chiefs type system. It makes sense to try to shore up that position after trading away Trent McDuffie.
Yeah. And all those other players that we just kind of just talked about, you can go defensive tackle, some of those guys that are still left, and Falk is still there if they want to go edge rusher. So, but Terrell makes a lot of sense. There's no way they're going to rely on this kid who didn't even play last year. I mean, he wasn't even all that great anyway. So yeah, they got to add another nickelback, no question. Okay, next up, Miami. Speaking of former Dolphin players. We'll go with the Dolphins, our first pick. With Miami, we went at corner and talked about that secondary. And so that was definitely one of many picks that they might need to look at that spot. Offensive guard and offensive tackle. Those were some other positions that we wanted to keep an eye on. Edge, maybe a wide receiver with size. So taking a look at who's still available here, it wouldn't even surprise me, to tell you the truth, if they double down at corner. But let's see. So I'm gonna say that they've got to look at corner. I think they do that again, maybe even safety, but I don't know if they would go with safety here at this spot. I wonder how high. I think in the second round, Miami, I don't know where their picks are, but I think Miami, a good fit for them might be Malachi Fields out of Virginia. I think it's a little too high for him here. So I'm going to take a look, though, at who I think the other top corners left on our board still. You've got Johnson, you've got Hood. They could probably use some more edge rush help, but I'm not really thrilled with the players that are left here. Parker, I guess he's still available. They're running a 4-3, so maybe that's not a bad idea. TJ Parker, Height's still there as well. And I know, of course, they got a defensive coach. Sure, he's going to want to do some more help there. So, yeah, maybe TJ Parker, since they already went corner. I guess it would be between Falk and Parker and Height. I'll go with Parker for Miami. What would you have done?
Yeah, no, I think Parker makes sense. I wouldn't have been opposed to the double up a corner. Maybe take Colton Hood, take both Tennessee corners, and just run that back.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
would make a lot of sense to me. I think that's probably how I would have looked. Maybe you look at offensive tackle, because I think there's some guys on the board that probably go first round, but I like it.
Okay. Next up is the Patriots, New England Patriots. So what are they going to do? They've got to replace a few guys they lost. Edge rusher, definitely. What direction do you think they go?
Yeah, I think this is a team that's going to be kind of built through the trenches. They could take a receiver after letting Stephon Diggs go. They did sign Romeo Doubs, but I still need some dynamic playmaker. Like, I think Concepcion would be interesting for the Patriots in the slot. But we saw in the Super Bowl, we saw the problem. The problem was the offensive line. They did get Elijah Vera Tucker in there, and Will Campbell hopefully will develop. But that right tackle spot, Morgan Moses should not be starting NFL offensive tackle. And I think the value lines up to take a right tackle. And the most Patriots offensive tackle on the board to me is Blake Miller, the offensive tackle from Clemson. I don't think he's going to be high on everyone's board, but it's just a really high character, high football IQ, solid player, does everything well. I think it's the type of right tackle the Patriots would bring in that's ready-made to fill in there, and maybe won't be an all-pro, but can get you by a lot better to protect Drake May.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so, he's the best lineman left on the board. And the other thing too, at guard, I don't think there's any question that they have got to add another guard, because as a Jet fan, you cannot count on Elijah Vera Tucker.
Fair.
So, and they also look at defensive tackle again. They lost, their key nose tackle. So there are a couple other guys that are, a couple of big guys, Hunter, Banks, that are still on our board. But obviously Miller makes a lot of sense. And that wraps it up with Seattle, the Super Bowl champs. And Seattle they're going to have to fill in some needs. They lost Woolen at corner. They lost Mafe at edge, and they lost Bryant at safety. They also got to eventually replace Reed along the defensive line, because he's 33 years old. So I know there's a lot of talk about them looking inside, maybe at guard. And if they did that, maybe Basantis from Texas A&M, the kid from Oregon, that's a possibility. I tell you, I'm going to go with corner, though. Seattle, Woolen's a really good player, and I think they need to fill that with some more talent. There are a couple of guys. You got Hood and you got Johnson. So I think that's the direction they go. Which one do they pick? All depends on who they like. I'll take maybe the guy that seems to be graded a little bit higher right now in Hood, but I think they can go either way. So I say corner. What do you think? What other options do you think they would have looked at?
Yeah, I like corner. I actually like Colton Hood. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up better than Jermod McCoy. Offensive line I think is the biggest need, but it really do need the interior, and there's just not that value's not there. Corner makes the most sense with what's left on the board. I don't know if there's anywhere else I would have gone. It's probably what I would have done too.
Yeah, there's some talk about wide receiver, but I don't know about that. I think, Horton really looked good when he was healthy. I get it. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't draft a guy if he's left on the board. If there's someone, maybe Cooper still there, I wouldn't go reaching for it in round one. But they seem to have, some young guys, Ricky White, Bobo does the job when he needs to. And the other thing is what are they going to do eventually at running back? They've got to add another running back at some point in this draft. And there's a lot of running backs. So which one will they get? That's going to be the question, even though Zach will get a lot of touches now, but I don't think he's that type of player. I think they need to bring in another guy that's going to share the load. And I'm not sure Emmanuel Wilson's that guy.
Yeah, and I mean, Charbonnet is probably going to miss a month, two, maybe,
That's
with the injury too. So I think you need someone if you want to compete at the beginning of the season.
Okay, so that is going to wrap it up. Shane, great job. I really appreciate it. Shane and I are in the same Dynasty League, so we have fun all season long. We'll have our own little Dynasty draft coming up, I guess, in a couple of months, so we're looking forward to that. We got links in the description where you can check out Shane over at DraftKings, and I'm sure we'll talk to Jared at some point as well, especially as we get closer to the regular season, and also especially talking a little about dynasty drafts and things of that nature, which is going to be hot and heavy right after the draft next month. So Shane, thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully we can get together sometime soon in the future and do something like this again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was a blast to go through the mock, and hopefully, people can check out Draft Sharks for your fantasy content.
Absolutely. So that'll wrap it up. For Shane Hallam, I'm Greg DePalma here at ourlads.com, the Our Lads Football Network, Proline TV, and we'll see you